Otiende could barely breathe under the cramped space of the bed, his pulse pounding in his ears, louder than the incessant knocking at the door. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he clutched his phone, trembling fingers typing out what might be his last text. The words to his pastor felt heavier than the bed frame pressing on his chest. "Pray for me, sir," he texted. "Ask my wife to forgive me. If I survive, I will truly walk with Jesus. If I don't, tell my family I am sorry." The knocking stopped for a moment, replaced by a tense silence that only heightened the dread in the room. The woman, Namazi, looked at Otiende with wide, terrified eyes. She whispered harshly, "Stay quiet. Let me handle this." Namazi hastily slipped on her robe, smoothed her hair, and moved to the door. Her hand shook as she unlatched it, revealing a burly man standing there, his expression unreadable. "I know you're in here," the man barked, stepping closer. Namazi forced a smile. "Oh, Mr. Qasim, you startled me. What's the problem?" The man frowned, then cleared his throat awkwardly. "I'm so sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to remind you about the plumbing repair tomorrow morning. It's urgent, so I thought I'd swing by to confirm." Namazi let out a relieved laugh that sounded far too forced. "Oh, of course. Thank you for the reminder. I'll be ready for the repair team. Sorry for the confusion." Qasim nodded, then looked past her into the apartment briefly. "All right then. Have a good day." As soon as the estate agent walked away, Namazi closed the door, locking it firmly. She leaned against it, exhaling shakily. Otiende, still under the bed, started to crawl out, his face drenched in sweat. "That was close," he muttered, wiping his forehead. But before Namazi could respond, there was another knock at the door, this one softer, almost hesitant. Their eyes met, panic bubbling back to the surface. "Don't answer it," Otiende hissed. Ignoring him, Namazi peeked through the peephole and froze, her face draining of color. It's him," she whispered, barely audible. "Who?" Otiende's voice cracked. "My ex-husband," Namazi replied, her voice trembling. Before Otiende could react, the doorknob twisted violently, and a deep voice growled from the other side. "Namazi, I know he's in there. Open this door, or I'll break it down." Otiende's phone buzzed with a message from his pastor. "Praying for you, my son. Remember, God is with you." He stared at the screen, paralyzed with fear, as Namazi backed away from the door. The knob stopped turning, replaced by the sound of heavy footsteps retreating down the hallway. Then came the sound of a key sliding into the lock. The sound of the key scraping against the lock sent chills down their spines. Otiende scrambled back under the bed, clutching his phone as though it were a lifeline. Namazi, now visibly shaking, tried to steady herself, inching toward the kitchen counter where a heavy rolling pin rested. The lock clicked, and the door creaked open slowly. "Namazi," the deep voice called out, softer now but still menacing. "You really thought you could hide him from me?" Otiende's heart pounded in his chest as he typed another frantic message. "Pastor, he's here. Please don't stop praying. Tell my wife, tell her I love her." The footsteps entered the apartment, slow and deliberate. A pair of scuffed boots came into view from Otiende's vantage point under the bed. The man's shadow loomed larger as he approached the bedroom door. "Where is he?" the man demanded, his voice ice cold. "You always thought you were smarter than me, Namazi, but I'm not leaving until I find him." Namazi stepped forward, clutching the rolling pin behind her back. "There's no one here, Daniel," she said, her voice wavering. "You need to leave before I call the police." Daniel let out a low, mocking chuckle. "The police? And what are you going to tell them?" that your little boyfriend here is trespassing in your apartment?" Namazi's knuckles whitened around the rolling pin. "Get out, now." Daniel stepped closer, his boots nearly touching Namazi's bare feet. "Or what?" Otiende, sweating profusely under the bed, tried to steady his breathing. The situation was spiraling. His phone buzzed again, a message from his wife this time. "Where are you?" "Dinner's getting cold." Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the living room. Daniel spun around, distracted by the sound. Namazi seized the moment, swinging the rolling pin with all her strength. It connected with the back of Daniel's head with a sickening thud. He stumbled, cursing, and fell to his knees. "Run!" Namazi screamed, her voice piercing. Otiende crawled out from under the bed, scrambling to his feet. But as he darted for the door, Daniel reached out, grabbing his ankle with a vice-like grip. Otiende crashed to the floor, panic surging through him. "You're not going anywhere," Daniel growled, blood dripping down his forehead. Namazi swung again, but this time Daniel caught the rolling pin mid-air, yanking it from her grasp. He pushed her backward with a force that sent her crashing into the wall. Otiende kicked at Daniel's hand, breaking free, and bolted toward the door. As he flung it open, he came face to face with a neighbor, a wiry, elderly man holding a Maasai rungu. "Is everything all right?" the neighbor asked, his voice shaky but determined. Otiende pointed frantically. "In there! He's attacking her!" The neighbor didn't hesitate. He stormed into the apartment, rungu raised, as Otiende ran down the hallway. He didn't stop running until he was outside, gasping for air under the dim glow of the street lights. His phone buzzed again, another message from his wife. "You're late, my love. Are you okay? Call me." Otiende looked back at the apartment building, hearing muffled shouts and crashes from within. He hesitated, guilt and fear battling inside him. Suddenly, Namazi appeared at the window, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. She mouthed something to him, but he couldn't make it out. Then, a shadow moved behind her, and the lights in the apartment went out. Otiende's legs trembled as he stood frozen beneath the flickering streetlight, staring up at the darkened window. His mind raced. Should he go back? Call the police? Run? The silence of the street was broken by the faint sound of sirens in the distance. He glanced at his phone. Another text from his wife. "I'm worried now. Pick up your phone. Where are you?" His hands trembled as he typed, "I'll explain later. I love you." Before he could press send, a sudden commotion erupted from the apartment. The window shattered as Namazi's scream cut through the night. Otiende's heart dropped. Without thinking, he bolted back toward the building. The apartment door was ajar, hanging loosely on its hinges. The elderly neighbor's rungu lay discarded in the hallway, streaked with blood. "Namazi!" Otiende called out, his voice cracking with fear. No answer. The apartment was eerily silent. He stepped inside, his shoes crunching on shattered glass. The living room was in disarray, furniture overturned, picture frames smashed. The neighbor was slumped in the corner, unconscious but breathing. Otiende moved cautiously toward the bedroom, where the door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open, and his stomach turned. Daniel lay sprawled on the floor, blood pooling around his head. Namazi stood over him, her chest heaving, holding a kitchen knife in her shaking hands. Her eyes darted to Otiende, wild and unfocused. He wouldn't stop," she stammered. He was going to." Otiende stepped forward, but Namazo raised the knife defensively. "Stay back," she cried, her voice breaking. "It's me, Namazo," Otiende said softly, raising his hands. "It's over now. but her gaze shifted past him, and her eyes widened in terror. "Behind you!" she screamed. Otiende spun around just in time to see Daniel, bloodied but alive, lunge at him with the rongu. The impact was swift and brutal, sending Otiende crashing to the floor, his vision blurred as pain exploded in his skull. Through the haze, he saw Namasi leap at Daniel, the knife flashing. A struggle ensued, their screams mingling with the sound of furniture crashing. Otiende's strength ebbed as darkness crept into the edges of his vision. The last thing he saw was the knife falling to the floor and the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate footsteps, approaching him. Then everything went black. Otiende's head throbbed as consciousness crept back to him. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing a blurred vision of the apartment's ceiling, smeared with shadows that seemed to dance in the dim light. Distantly, he heard the sound of a man groaning, followed by hurried footsteps. As his senses sharpened, Otiende became acutely aware of his own predicament. His hands were tied behind his back, and he was slumped against the wall in the corner of the room. Namasi sat a few feet away, her hands bound as well, her tear-streaked face pale and terrified. In the middle of the room, Daniel paced, the knife in his hand glinting under the faint light. Blood still trickled from the wound on his head, but his expression was cold, calculating, and cruel. "Did you think you could kill me?" Daniel spat, glaring at Namasi. "After everything we've been through?" Namasi's voice was barely above a whisper. "Let us go, Daniel. Please, this doesn't have to end like this." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, it will end, but not for me." He turned his attention to Otiende, who was now fully awake but paralyzed with fear. "And you," Daniel sneered, crouching down in front of Otiende, "the brave little boyfriend. How does it feel to throw your life away for a fling?" Otiende opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His mind was racing, desperate for a way out. The sound of distant sirens grew louder, cutting through the tense air. Daniel's head snapped toward the window, his eyes narrowing. "Who called the cops?" he growled, his voice dangerously low. Neither Otiende nor Namasi responded, but their expressions betrayed their hope. Daniel grabbed Namasi by the arm, yanking her to her feet. "If they come in here, you're going first," he hissed, pressing the knife to her throat. The sirens stopped abruptly, replaced by the crackle of a police radio. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside the apartment, followed by a commanding voice. "This is the police. Open the door and come out with your hands up." Daniel's grip on Namasi tightened. He looked at Otiende, then back at the door, his mind visibly racing. "No one's coming in here," Daniel shouted back, dragging Namasi toward the door with the knife still pressed against her neck. Otiende struggled against his restraints, his desperation growing with every second. As Daniel reached the doorway, Namasi mustered all her strength, slamming her elbow into his ribs. Daniel grunted in pain but didn't release her. The door burst open, and 2 officers stormed in, their guns drawn. "Drop the weapon," one of them commanded. Daniel hesitated, his grip faltering as he assessed the situation. Namasi seized the moment. She twisted free of his grasp and stumbled backward, giving the officers a clear shot. A deafening crack rang out as a single gunshot shattered the tension. Daniel collapsed to the floor, the knife clattering from his hand. The room was eerily still. Namasi sank to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The officers moved swiftly, securing Daniel and checking his pulse. Otiende, still bound, was finally freed by one of the officers. He rubbed his wrists, his mind struggling to process the chaos. He looked at Namasi, who was trembling but alive, and then at Daniel's motionless body. As he turned his gaze toward the window, Something caught his attention, a figure standing in the shadows outside, watching. The figure was tall, cloaked in darkness, and unmoving. Otiende blinked, but when he looked again, it was gone, leaving only an unsettling emptiness where it had stood. "Are you all right?" one of the officers asked, snapping him out of his thoughts. Otiende nodded weakly, but couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Outside, the night was still and quiet, but somewhere in the distance, a faint whisper seemed to linger in the air. "You can't run from me forever." The next few hours passed in a blur for Otiende and Namazi. The police escorted them to the station for statements, and paramedics treated their minor injuries. Daniel, though alive, was in critical condition and transported to the hospital under police custody. Otiende sat in a cold interrogation room, staring at his trembling hands. The faint scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, and the fluorescent light above flickered occasionally, heightening his unease. Across the table, a calm but stern detective eyed him carefully. "You've had quite the night," the detective said, flipping through a file. "Lucky to be alive. That guy, Daniel, right? He's been on our radar for a while." Otiende's throat was dry, but he managed to speak. "What happens now? To him? To us?" The detective leaned back, folding his arms. "Daniel will face multiple charges if he survives. Assault, unlawful confinement, attempted murder, you name it. As for you, Mr. Otiende," he paused, narrowing his eyes, "you're not exactly squeaky clean here. Cheating on your wife and getting involved in this. You're lucky to be walking out of here." Otiende lowered his head, shame washing over him. The detective's voice softened slightly. "Look, whatever brought you to that apartment tonight, make it right. Clean up your act before you find yourself in deeper trouble." By the time Otiende left the station, dawn was breaking. The cool morning air brushed against his face as he walked to his car. His phone buzzed. It was his wife. He hesitated, staring at her name on the screen. He couldn't bring himself to answer, not yet. As he drove home, the events of the night replayed in his mind. Namazi's terrified face, Daniel's rage, the figure in the shadows. Who was watching them, and why?